Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful day in the Commonwealth. We love fall in the Commonwealth. School has started, and we're here to kick off our SCAAC meeting. And as a reminder, SCAAC stands for the School Curriculum Assessment and Accountability Council. Our job is to really study, review, and make recommendations concerning Kentucky's system of academic standards, assessing learning, identifying academic competencies and deficiencies of students, holding schools accountable for that learning, and assisting schools to improve their performance. That's a lofty goal, but I think this group together can definitely do that. I want to start by announcing some new members that have joined us. Josh Trosper is representing principals. Alan Young is going to be representing teachers, and Carrie Ballinger is representing superintendents. Historically, this committee has been referred to as the Noah's Ark Committee because there are two of every group, and so we often think of 2 by 2. Deborah Atherton, Jason Reeves, and myself have been reappointed. As a reminder, we do try to really carefully study and advise on different items that come up. So we hope the new members will enjoy being a part of this curriculum. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Chandler, who helps us through some logistics. Melissa.
Absolutely. Thanks, Janabeth. Before I call roll, I'd like to provide some information for members about conducting meetings in a virtual setting. This virtual meeting must comply with the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. The public may view the meeting via the link provided on the public agenda, which is posted on our KDE website. SCAAC members must ensure that their video is streaming and they can be seen throughout the duration of the meeting. And additionally, please keep your microphones muted unless you're speaking, as all discussions must be broadcast to the public. Each time you do speak during the meeting, please unmute your mic, state your name, and just take a short pause. That'll give our software time to recognize you. For the agenda items that will require a formal vote, we won't have any of those today, but we will conduct a roll call to record the vote of each member. Please silence or turn off any other electronic devices that could cause disruption to your sound feed. And lastly, minutes will be taken and shared with the general public on the KDE website when those are available. So I'll go on and call roll. Members, when I call your name, please make sure that your camera and mic are on, state your full name, and then indicate you're present. And we will need 9 members for a quorum. Artavia Ackland.
Artavia Ackland, Shelby County, Principal, present.
Thank you. Heather Aldridge.
Heather Aldridge, Chief Academic Officer and DAC, Russell Independent, present.
Thank you. Deborah Atherton. Carrie Ballinger.
Carrie Ballinger, Superintendent of Rockcastle County Schools, present.
Welcome. Houston Barber. I think he couldn't be here with us today. Renee Boss.
Renee Boss, teacher, Woodford County Public Schools, present.
Martha Emmons. Chuck Fletcher.
Chuck Fletcher, board member, present.
Janabeth Francis.
Janabeth Francis, District Assessment Coordinator, present.
Leslie Jeffries.
Good morning, Leslie Jeffries, Hart County Parent Representative.
Brenda McGowan.
Brenda McGowan, member at large, here.
Kristen Putnam. Jason Reeves.
Jason Reeves, University of the Cumberlands.
Allison Tammy. Josh Trosper.
Josh Trosper, Assistant Principal, Knox Central High School, Knox County Public Schools, present.
I'll make sure I say that right next time.
No problem.
And Alan Young.
Alan Young, teacher and district collaboration lead for the Jefferson County Public Schools, present.
Great, thank you. Welcome to our existing members and our new members. And Chair Francis, we do have a quorum today.
Wonderful. So at this time, we're going to review and approve the minutes from the July 2024 meeting. They were sent to you in your SCAAC member folder. If you could take a moment to look at those. Is there someone who would like to, thank you, Heather, made a motion to approve these?
I second
And
the motion.
thank you, Chuck Fletcher. Okay, the minutes, we do not need a vote on the minutes, if I'm correct on that, Melissa. So they are approved. And we're going to jump into our meeting agenda. And we're fortunate to have Robbie Fletcher, the Commissioner of the Kentucky Department of Education, to bring us some greetings.
Thank you, Chair Francis. I appreciate that so much, and appreciate the opportunity to be here in front of the School Curriculum Assessment Accountability Council, also affectionately known as SCAAC, as we sometimes say here. First of all, I want to say thank you to each member for your service. This is as Chair Francis read the charge for this group, it is a very important, but also very tough responsibility at times to be a part of this council. So we're very thankful for your being here. I also want to say congratulations and welcome to the new members. This is our first meeting together. So this is my first meeting. We're the new kids on the block. So very thankful for your agreeing to be a part of this. A little bit about SCAAC. Of course, Chair Francis gave us the charge, but also too, SCAAC is one of 19 different advisory councils groups for the commissioner. One of 11 that's set forth as part of being a state mandate. So again, we try our best to take the input of what we receive from different groups and put it into practice here at the department to impact learning for all kids. Also, too, this is a big week for accountability. When you talk about assessment and accountability, we have QC review this week. Last week, we announced the 4.0, prototype 4.0. And just to kind of give you an idea of our taking the recommendations and the thoughts of different folks, 2 weeks ago, we attended, when I say we, members of KDE, our team, Jennifer Stafford, Rhonda Sims, and others, we attended the Superintendent Summit. And there was a lot of ideas around the thoughts of local accountability as a part of the new accountability model. So we included that into the survey survey items, and also into the information that we sent out as a part of 4.0. And the reason why I bring that up, it's so important for people to see that when we're out listening, when we have advisory councils that's giving us information, we review that. And we also want to put that back out for other people to review before we move forward. So again, I am very proud of the team here and how they listen. They listen so well, not only to the commissioner, but also to the advisory groups and to the superintendents as we move forward. And I think the superintendents on this call would also remember, if you were part of that summit, the session that we had with KDE, I thought was a very good session. It was a great learning session for all of us. But again, that's what I'm very proud of the team at the Kentucky Department of Education for, how we listen and try to put that back into practice. So that's part of what this council is about, is to provide that type of information, that type of input. And I promise you that our team and your commissioner will listen as we move forward, as we have in the past too. Some other things too that I want to start off too. I've had the pleasure of serving on several accountability committees and other things with other members here. I probably should start with an apology for my behavior at any of those accountability meetings. Sometimes I get a little passionate about accountability and assessment, but again, I've been so, all jokes aside, it has been great to serve with so many of you in different roles, whether it be as a superintendent, whether a member of an accountability committee, and even LSAC. I've been a member of LSAC with other superintendents, Superintendent's Advisory Council also too. So some of those 19 different committees I've been a part of as a superintendent and as a principal. So I do look forward to working together with this group. I'm very excited about where we're moving with accountability, very excited about the next part. And still just a little bit of Jennifer's thunder, Dr. Stafford's thunder a little bit later. This study phase, we officially kicked off the study phase with releasing 4.0 last week. And some of the districts that are on this call are part of those 36 districts that are given that intense, open-ended feedback back to us on what they're seeing with 4.0, what they feel like works, what may need some more thought. So again, it's all part of that listening to our stakeholders. But also too, every single person on this call has the opportunity to give us feedback through surveys. We've sent surveys out for parents, for teachers, for assessment coordinators, for so many others that we want to get that feedback as you read through the prototype. But again, very excited about the opportunity to be here today with you, but also too more excited about the input that we'll hear from you as we move forward. So with that being said, thank you for this opportunity. It's good to see you, and I'll turn it back over to Chair Francis. Chair Francis, again, thank you for all the work that you've done personally. You and I have actually been on some small subcommittees together, and we've had some great discussions over the years. So thank you for your service also too. So Chair Francis, back to you.
Thank you, and we're honored to have you leading the department. And I think I really want to say that the prototype work, I spent some time this weekend reviewing all the printed material that has come out about it, but you've all done a fabulous job of getting us printed material, video material, however you learn and absorb information best. The department wants your input. And so when we get to item 8 on our agenda, item 7, you'll have a chance to kind of look at some details. But we're going to kick off with my favorite subject, and that is mathematics. And I know our commissioner loves mathematics too, but you may remember that House Bill 162, the Kentucky Numeracy Counts Act, was passed. And we're hearing today from the newly announced Jennifer Fraley, who will be the Director of Mathematics, and Mickey Ray, the Chief Academic Officer for the department. And our thought this time is for us as SCAAC to get information on the timeline and the current status, because as this moves, we're going to be seeing information about it and hearing more about it. You may remember that we have a very similar act for reading and literacy, and so this parallels that. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer and Mickey.
Thank you, Jana Beth, very much. I just want to make sure still that everybody can hear me. I don't want to thank you. I don't want to be talking and you not be able to hear me. So as Jana Beth said, I am the Kentucky Director of Mathematics. Or my major role is the support of House Bill 162, which you know that every time our legislature meets, we have a new House Bill 162. So that's why we codify it and call it the Kentucky Numeracy Counts Act, so that next year when there's a new House Bill 162, we're not confused about that. So we'll be moving forward and making sure that we focus on that language of Kentucky Numeracy Counts Act. I am in the Office of Teaching and Learning. Mickey Ray is my mentor, saving grace, as the Chief Academic Officer of the department, but without her support and leadership, I'm not sure that this Kentucky Numeracy Counts Act would be here. She took a strong role in the support within the legislature for that to happen. This was a bill that was sponsored by Representative Tipton. It gives the Department of Education $5 million a year for 2 years. So that part is not necessarily parallel to what was going on with early literacy, as the amounts are vastly different. But we are very thankful for the opportunity for some funding to move some of this work ahead in mathematics. When the legislation was first being proposed, I was actually a chief academic officer in Carter County at the time, and I was very interested in this legislation as I was watching it. And if you were doing the same thing, you probably remember that the initial discussion around that bill was the focus was going to be on grades 4 through 8. Because that is when math concepts seem to get a little more abstract for our students. And there's also a lot of work going on in the area of early literacy that our teachers are very engaged in, and it's taking a lot of their time and effort. But as the bill made its way through the legislative process, it really became obvious that we have to start at the beginning. We can't doctor the plant at the leaves or at the stems. We have to doctor it at the roots, and that is why the Kentucky Numeracy Counts Act really focuses a lot of its efforts on K-3, but the legislation is so insightful because it does offer some opportunities for middle school students as well. So there is it does have a K-8 vibe to it, but it is more focused on early elementary. I think it's important that we also have a good understanding of what the word numeracy means, because there is a lot packed into to that idea. So numeracy is really referring to that capacity, that understanding and ability, the confidence, so that math identity that our students have, and their disposition to use math in daily life. So it's really about students developing that understanding through application in all areas of mathematics. So it's not just about counting. It's not just about number sense. It includes number sense, but it also includes algebraic thinking, measurement, geometry, statistics and data, and probability. All of those strands that our Kentucky Academic Standards for Mathematics focus on are embedded in this idea of numeracy. So today, what I wanted to kind of do for you is to share the timeline and the current status for implementing what I like to call the big buckets of the Kentucky Numeracy Counts Act. There's a lot of work in that act, and some of that work is across agency work. So there's work that is going on with the Standards Board. There's work that is going on with CPE. But I really wanted you to be able to see what probably your stakeholders, the people that are talking to you about your role on SCAAC and about your role in your school or district, what they are probably most interested in. And so those are those critical Kentucky Numeracy Counts action items. So the first, and I think it's really foundational for everything that this act is about, if we are going to provide aligned instruction and if we are going to provide a seamless multi-tiered system of supports for our students, and if we're going to be able to make sure that our students are reaching proficiency by the time they leave us at elementary school in mathematics, then we have to have a strong assessment in place that is telling us that is reliable, is valid, and is also giving us the right classification. So it has that classification accuracy of where our students are. And so this is very similar to what is going on in early literacy, because you know that the department worked very hard to review those assessments and to publish a list of approved universal screeners and diagnostics that do meet those criteria, that are reliable, valid, and are accurate in terms of classification. So that is one of the big buckets of work that this act includes, that we will also publish a list of approved numeracy universal screeners and diagnostics. Another big area of work is around that very important professional learning for our K-8 teachers. Providing that high quality professional learning that helps them to implement their HQIRs with success, and being able to really have a networked community of educators that are working together to improve their professional practice. And then the last big bucket that I think a lot of folks are interested in is the opportunity to apply for a high quality instructional resource, or HQIR, grant to purchase approved high quality instructional resources. So you know those resources that are scoring green in ed reports, and that as your schools and districts go through that process, they find that the approval process, they find that these resources meet the needs that they have in their district. But then also the ability to have some funding to purchase that curriculum-based professional learning that goes along with those HQIRs. A lot of times that is the thing that gets kind of left off the plate, or it gets only a little small portion of the plate because of funding. But these HQIRs are coming to our schools and districts with tons of resources, with digital resources, with print resources, with social media resources. And how do we make sure that our teachers know about all of those resources and that are able to use them in a unit and lesson internalization protocol process to develop that high quality instruction? So those are kind of the three big areas. And so what I wanted to tell you about today was a little bit about where we are in the process around those things. I'm excited to tell you that we are a little bit ahead of the game in some of these things, in accordance to the timelines that were set forth in the legislation. So around that published list of universal screeners and diagnostics, we felt like it was really important to help streamline for our schools and districts, and also for the vendors, that process, so that we are not going down different roads and people are confused, like when's that list coming out and when's that list coming out. So everything is on the same timeline. So we will open up that submission process for those assessment vendors in November. And then in November and December and January, the Department of Education already has an established process for how those materials are reviewed. We look at their technical manuals, we look at all of that information about their reliability and validity and their classification accuracy to produce a published list for our schools and districts to choose from. Now, one thing that I think Mickey was very intuitive about this very early on. And as this work was going on around literacy, a lot of the vendors submitted their technical manuals and information for math at the same time. So as this was going on last year, they submitted that. And we know that many of our schools and districts are using iReady and the NWEA MAP assessment as a universal screener. And those two assessments, we already know meet that reliability, validity, and classification accuracy for numeracy. So if a district has selected that and they are satisfied with how their district is using it and the information that they are getting, those assessments will be on the approved list. So I think that is kind of a relief to schools and districts that have selected that, and they can say, well, we know we're on the right page with that anyway. We also know that there are some, especially in mathematics, there are a lot of informal diagnostics out there. This process does not preclude a district from using those, but they do have to make sure that they are selecting a diagnostic that is on the list, and then they may support that with some of those diagnostics. Like the Kentucky Center for Mathematics has a suite of diagnostic assessments, and they provide training to teachers before they're ever allowed to use those diagnostics to make sure they know how to use them and that they're able to make accurate distinctions about student performance. It would be okay for a district to continue to use those or to introduce those into their system, but they still will select an approved universal screener and an approved diagnostic. So that list will come out in February, and then according to the legislation, the district doesn't really have to make that formal adoption until the 26-27 school year. So we are getting out ahead of that to give districts time to look at those resources and to make informed decisions and ask questions if they have questions. I've already had co-ops reach out to me to say, can we provide some professional learning to our districts around some of these assessments that get on the list so that they understand how to use them, and they can have that information before they make a decision. And I'm like, absolutely, I will help you do anything that you need to do in order to make that happen, because information is power, and we want to make sure that our folks have all the information that they need. The next area, and this is probably one that folks have a lot more interest in than purchasing a universal screener and a diagnostic, are those professional learning opportunities that are being available to our teachers and our leaders. So we are a little bit ahead of the game with some of those as well. You probably have seen some information come through from lots of different newsletters that the Department of Education has published in the commissioner's messages and the standards newsletter, information about the EPIC Numeracy Alliance. This is a professional learning program, so it is grounded in professional learning. From Carnegie Learning. So some of you are familiar with Carnegie. You may use some of their products in your schools, but they have a program called Patterns. and it has two separate components. It has a component for 3-5 and a component for grades 6 through 8. And EPIC is a offering, let me just say it this way, EPIC is offering seats to 200 educators in this professional learning program statewide. So there is a kickoff meeting for EPIC coming up on the 27th of September, and then another one on October the 17th, where if you haven't committed yet, you're interested, but you have signed up and you want to go learn more information. So this will be a face-to-face meeting where you can learn more about this program. But as I said, it is professional learning. It's really about building the content knowledge and the pedagogical practice of teachers in grades 3 through 5 and 6 through 8. So it does not have an early numeracy component, but we are taking care of that in some other places. We also have folks who were already signing up to be part of Kentucky's Access to Algebra through Kentucky, through Advanced Kentucky. Lots of Kentuckies in there. That is a program that helps middle schools to be able to offer high school algebra in the middle school grades. And while you don't have to have partnership with Access to Algebra in order to be able to do that, I will say that sometimes districts bring in algebra to the 8th grade, and then they quickly let that go because they haven't built the systems in place to be sure that that is successful. In the middle school, as you know, we have Kentucky academic standards for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. If you're going to bring in algebra standards, we have to find a way to make sure that we still are teaching and assessing 6th grade standards, 7th grade standards, and 8th grade standards. And that takes some work. It takes some vertical planning. It takes some time, and it takes some expertise that Advanced Kentucky is able to provide to our schools and districts to help them make that venture successful. So there is funding in the Numeracy Counts Act for Advanced Kentucky to double the number of schools that they have participating in Access to Algebra. So that is an offering for those middle grades, 6 through 8. Then we have in development, and which will be ready for a launch in the summer, a numeracy academy for teachers being planned and facilitated by the Kentucky Center for Mathematics, and also a leader academy that will be launched in the summer that will provide training and support to school and district leaders to support those teachers. We are really looking to try to find ways to build some systemic capacity with that, to incentivize the participation of both leaders and teachers from schools and districts so that they are learning alongside each other. And we are being very intentional in our planning. PIMSR is working with KCM to make sure they know what's the training look like for teachers. And then KCM is looking at PIMSR saying, what is it that leaders need to know, and how are we making sure that our teachers are doing those things in the classroom? So that planning is going on now. We've had several planning meetings already, developing those modules, making sure that those are going to be of the highest quality. We're being very intentional that the launch for both of those academies will be in July so that schools and districts can capitalize on that for professional learning for their teachers and their leaders. And then as that work unfolds over a 2-year cohort, we're not going to take folks out of their buildings and their classrooms for this work because we know that's where they need to be. We also know that substitutes are a major issue, and we don't want to put any undue burdens and hardships on our schools and districts and leave our students without a high quality teacher. So we are making sure that we are providing synchronous and asynchronous virtual opportunities for those folks to learn to practice, to engage in conversations with each other. But any time that they meet face to face, it will be when school is not in session, i.e. summer. So trying to be very intentional about that. So registration for both of those academies will open in April. Folks will watch for information coming out from the department, coming out from KCM, coming out from PIMSR for registration. And as I said, a launch for those in July. And then the last that folks are very interested in are those grants for those high quality instructional resources. We have made the decision to postpone those to actually allow us to give greater grant award amounts. So, $5 million a year is not a lot of money. So if we can bump these grants out to the second year, that gives us a little bit more money to be able to provide larger grants to districts and hopefully more grants to districts to be able to purchase those high quality instructional resources. We know a lot of folks used ESSER money and some things like that to purchase those resources, and so they already have those in place. So these grants could also be used to further and continue that curriculum-based professional learning that is so important for that implementation of those HQIRs. So we have we have a lot going on. As I said, these are just 3 big buckets of the work. There's other things going on around work with our educator preparation programs and if observation rubrics for student teachers and those kinds of things. And if you have interest in those, I'll be happy to come back at another time and share those with you. But I wanted to give you this information so that you have it as you carry out your role on this council, but also as you are in your day-to-day roles in your schools and your districts, and you're able to have those discussions about what is coming, what is already out there, what is coming, and you can make the best decisions for your students and your staff. I have left some links in this PowerPoint. You have the exact verbiage of House Bill 162 from this year, but also something that the department put together, a wonderful piece of guidance around the timeline that really helps you see what is being offered and when that work is rolling out. We do have a website up and going now. So if you go to KDE's website and you just use the search bar to search for Kentucky Numeracy Counts, you will find our website, and we will also be posting lots of updates and information there. I'm sharing with you my email address. You are more than welcome to reach out to me at any time. I share my cell phone number, so for texts or calls, whatever you need, I will be happy to share that with you as well. But I just want to say thank you, a big thank you for allowing me the chance to talk to you about this very important work, but also for your time, because I know how busy you are.
Jennifer, we really appreciate you coming in, and I've made a lot of notes about the timeline, and so it was a perfect set of information. Before you leave us, I wanted to see if anybody on the council had any questions. Okay, as always, Jennifer has provided her email. This slide deck is linked in our folder. So if you want to go back and read the act, or if you have a question later on, I'm looking forward to seeing the diagnostic list that comes out. I think everybody feels pretty good about their screeners. Math diagnostics can be a little challenging. So I know you all are busy working on that right now. But again, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you all very much.
Oh, we did have one person raise their hand. Jason, please go ahead.
Thank you, Janet Beth. Jennifer, you mentioned just about some work going on in including the ed prep programs and student teaching rubric. I would very much be interested in getting an update on that at a later point.
Okay.
in the year when you're ready to do so.
Yes, and I will just really quickly say that yesterday and today, EPSB is convening those EPPs to kind of get their involvement in this work. And we plan to really roll up our sleeves and dig into that in October. So maybe sometime after that date, I can come back, or you are more than welcome anytime to reach out to me, and I'll fill you in on what's going on with that.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Fraley, if I can just add, so Dr. Melissa Diebel is actually leading that work on behalf of the agency in the Office of Education Licensure and Effectiveness. And so she has established a working group. And so Dr. Reeves, I'll make sure that Dr. Diebel knows that you are interested and just pass that along to her. So thank you so much for your interest.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Again, thank you, Jennifer, for giving us such valuable information, and the timelines have been very helpful. Okay, let's see. Let us move on. And this is the exciting part of the meeting, I think. So we already got a little preview of it from our commissioner, but Jennifer is going to bring us some information. This is built, it's kind of fun because if you were here in July, we heard another prototype. So we're so involved in the design process, and I appreciate KDE's commitment to getting comments and feedback all along the way. So I'm going to turn things over to Jennifer, who's going to talk to us about prototype number 4.
Thanks, Jana Beth, and I take the baton from one Jennifer to the next. So we've got 2 Jennifers here today. So welcome and good morning, everyone. I just wanted to welcome our new members. Your appointment shows your dedication and your expertise to the field. So I welcome you to the School Curriculum Assessment and Accountability Council. The Office of Assessment and Accountability has the privilege to work with and manage this important council. So we welcome you and look forward to your contributions to the council, and welcome back for those of you that have been reappointed. We're glad that you're here and your continued commitment to the conversations into the future of our students. It is an exciting time to be in assessment and accountability. We have a couple of questions for you about the reimagined accountability system that, as we've heard, we're looking for your input and your critical insights and your perspective on these, the prototype. I want to start by just giving you a little bit of history about the Kentucky United We Learn Council, because it's an exciting time right now, but it's taking us several years to get to where we are in this conversation. So the journey has been across several years. It actually started back in 2020 with the Kentucky Education Feedback Survey that was launched, and it was a Keep, Stop, Start survey that we heard from hundreds of people about the need to move forward and have different types of systems. That led to conversation with the Kentucky Coalition of Advancing Education in 2021. And the council was really spurred on a $3 million grant to continue that good work around that coalition's conversation that the U.S. Department of Education granted Kentucky Department of Education through the CGSA grant. That's a competitive grant on state assessments. And that funds the Kentucky United We Learn Council. So the council is made up of members from different communities that really have developed and brought forward the insight of the Kentucky United We Learn report. So based on that new vision, the United We Learn Council has brought those ideas into light. And they were basically three really big ideas within that report, and that was to engage communities and build strong connections and collaborations with schools, developing deep partnerships with communities to support improvement, to advance education in ways around vibrant learning experiences, and to accelerate innovations, especially in assessments and accountability. So those members of the United We Learn Council are exploring different ways to achieve a future of education around those three big concepts. So the overarching goal is to build a prosperous Kentucky, and this is a moonshot. The council has really taken on the premise to shoot for the moon, and their moonshot is to build a prosperous Kentucky by launching an accountability system that does include new assessments, that is meaningful and useful to all learners, and one that portrays a more complex picture of each student and values collaboration among our leaders. So we wanted to give each student in our community or in our schools a way to engage with the curriculum in new and exciting ways. So the council then is made up again of about 55 members who come from all different types of stakeholder groups, and they're led by Penny Christian. She is our chair. She's a parent representative. Jim Flynn, who is our vice chair, who is the the Kentucky Association of School Superintendents. He is the executive director. And then it's led by Karen Dodd, Chief Performance Officer here at KDE. So the council is made up and are bringing these conversations to light. So the council then started in November of 2022. And over that first year, from November of 22 to November of 2023, it was really made up of three committees around those three key ideas about vibrant learning experiences, accelerating innovation, and building those connections with communities. So they worked throughout that first year to really engage and really learn about what's happened in Kentucky over the past, learn outside of Kentucky and what's happening in other states as well as other nations around these practices around assessment and accountability. So I had the opportunity to work with the Accelerating Innovation Committee, that standing committee, throughout that year. And then in November of 2023, we took a turn from those standing committees to work groups. And those work groups were meant to be very focused, very short-term groups that took a particular topic or idea and developed it. So in 2023, November 2023 through April of 2024, I had the opportunity to work with a menu of options work group. Now, there were other work groups about communities and vibrant learning experiences, but I had the opportunity to work with that menu of options work group, and some of the work within the prototypes have their specific recommendations. In April of 2024, so April of this year, we reorganized those standing committees, and a system of systems work group was developed, who were developing these prototypes. And you can see here on the slide that we have been in the prototype development phase, and that system of systems work group has really been instrumental in those prototypes. So in June of 2024, we developed a version version 1.0 was developed in June, and we shared it with the system of systems work group. And we heard from them in our convening what we thought we heard, and we put that on paper for them, and they quickly let us know that we needed to tweak it and revise it in different ways. So 2.0 was shared broadly, and Chair Francis mentioned that the SCAAC got to hear the 2.0. We shared that very broadly and got feedback from a large amount of community members and stakeholder groups. But we want more feedback. So we took that feedback, took it to the Kentucky Board of Education in at their August meeting, and they heard version 3.0 based on the Kentucky United We Learns Council's meeting, as well as Board of Education members' feedback, as well as others. And as recently as 2 weeks ago, we met with the at the summit with the Kentucky Association of School Superintendents, who had information and ideas around a local accountability system. So this prototype phase has been evolving, and we're listening and developing the versions that we're now taking to the study phase. And so you can see here, we've been in this prototype development phase, and now we are moving to the study phase. And into the study phase, we are moving toward and taking into that study phase version 4.0. So version 4.0 is a little different than our previous version. It still continues with choice points, but it brings things together through this idea of there's a launch pad, and there are steps or phases to get us to what could be an endpoint. So taking into the study phase is this version 4.0 that provides some actionable step. When you look at the document, you'll see that there are points of which are changed from previous versions because we've included the input on that. And the document really focuses on the vision, that stakeholder feedback that we've heard, and different options for systems change. There are study questions that we're going to take into that phase around state accountability, federal accountability, assessments, and reporting. Now, assessment and accountability are two different systems. They're interconnected, but they are two different systems. Accountability are those measures and metrics that you hold schools accountable toward. And those are those things like those indicators that lead in our current system to color ratings and things like that. Those are pieces around the accountability. Assessment, separate than accountability, but intertwined, are the tests, if you will, or the surveys that are given that students take or are engaged in. So you think about the assessment system being those reading and math, those science, social studies, and writing assessments. The accountability leads to those pieces of school quality in demonstrations of school quality. So let's start with state accountability. So the long-term goals. So again, there are choice points within version 4.0. One of which could be an accreditation style accountability system. So if the long-term goal is a fully functioning accreditation style system, then the Kentucky United We Learn Council envisions a separate accreditation style model for the state's accountability system alongside a federal system. So the reimagined system emphasizes transparency and continuous improvement by providing the schools, district leaders, and families, communities with information around a broad set of domains, such as academic outcomes, vibrant learning experiences, or teaching and leadership. So in an accreditation style system, the school would collect evidence, do some self-evaluation, and submit evidence around those big domains to an external evaluator. So now, some actionable steps. Again, if the long-term goal is an accreditation style system, it will take significant improvements and to the ability to build the capacity for readiness through a phased-in approach. Looking at that left-hand box, to allow time to build the infrastructure for the accreditation style system across the state, Kentucky may initially start with a vibrant learning experience indicator before expanding that to the other domains. So the state could begin with a new vibrant learning experience indicator that captures the percent of students engaged in those deeper, meaningful learning experiences. And the menu of options work group, they come up and developed a list of possible options around those menu of options work groups or those vibrant learning experiences that include capstone projects, student learn conferences, self-led, service-led student learning experiences. And they were also very committed to having a process that schools could come up with their own innovative ideas and the state have a process in which to approve some locally innovative practices. So once that vibrant learning experience indicator is implemented and educators become better at offering those deeper learning experiences, then the next phase could be to include the quality of the vibrant learning experiences in addition to the percentage. So that first box is only about offering and just the fact that the student has access to those vibrant learning experiences. Then you could take in that second box the step to include the quality around those. So this phase would include the accreditation style indicator where schools would again engage in that self-evaluation and rate their progress in providing the quality around those vibrant learning experiences and then submit evidence to that external evaluator. The final box to achieve the Kentucky United We Learn Council's vision is a separate accreditation style model for the state accountability system, in addition to that vibrant learning experiences that could expand to those academic outcomes, teaching and learning, and so forth. So now, from stakeholder feedback, again, we've heard that from the Kentucky Association of School Superintendents, it peaked there. Another approach has emerged involving that local accountability model. That model would emphasize the importance of community-driven initiatives around local decision-making. This approach would emphasize that collaboration between the local stakeholders in the accountability process and then allow schools to address in accountability the unique needs and the priorities that the local community would have and would want to be addressed. That local community system, as defined by the Kentucky United We Learn Council, is a set of system-managed policies, instruments, and resources and practices that district leadership would use to engage school in improvement efforts with their local community. And this would generally be beyond the federal mandate. So we would have a separate federal system as well as a possible local system that would include those pieces that and components that the community would want to see addressed. So it would schools would engage parents, community members in that decision-making and local context and bring those local accountability system. And the thought is if we put this local accountability piece in, that there would be some common elements required, like vibrant learning experiences and the disaggregation of any data that would be reported into student demographic groups, so that there would be reporting of data by student demographic groups that address those community needs. Now, let's turn to the federal accountability system. So we've talked about state, we've talked about local. Let's look at the approach that prototype version 4.0 takes to a federal system. And the approach here is to minimize the footprint of the federal accountability that would allow space for that state and local accountability. So limit the impact to the field with federal to just what we have to do federally, and allow the local districts to provide more space for those unique needs and meeting the needs of the local community. So the primary functions would be around, in the federal system, around the disaggregated data of student groups that we have to identify, and those classifications around CSI, TSI, ATSI, and so forth. So the states are required to identify 3 different types of groups federally. And that's, I just mentioned CSI, which is comprehensive support and improvement. And schools identified for comprehensive support and improvement includes those schools that are the lowest 5% of student outcomes in their overall performance, as well as high schools that fall below the 80% on their graduation rate. TSI then is targeted support and improvement, as well as additional targeted support and improvement. And those schools are identified around student groups that are in those schools that perform as low as that bottom 5%. So the bottom 5% is CSI is around all schools' performance. TSI is around the student group performance, and it could be any of the schools are could be identified for ATSI and TSI. And then there has to be a third category of which could be another termed or some similar designation as, for example, meets requirements. So that would be neither that CSI, TSI, or ATSI, but the other category. So there only has to be 3 federal classifications. So it could be something around like meets requirements or something. So the idea here would be to streamline that federal reporting to just the basic required components, and then to eliminate that color rating system that we have, that currently have right now for our schools in the state, which would be that color rating around each of those overall performance from red to blue. So again, some actionable steps would be to have a flight path in our federal reporting. And again, if that long-term goal is to reduce the federal footprint, then the first step that the state could take would be to include only those components that are required for accountability. And that includes state assessment results, progress on English language proficiency, and then there needs to be a quality of school climate and safety measure. It doesn't have to be a survey, but there has to be a quality of school climate and safety measure. At high school, then we'd add those additional components of post-secondary readiness and graduation rate for the identification of school improvement. So one additional simplification that we could make to the federal system is to replace in the current system, the change component with individual student growth. That change component is on school indicators that we have in the current system from the status and looking at the school indicators from the current year to the prior year for each of those. So, for example, if you take a middle school and looking at their not post-secondaries, but their reading and math indicator and looking at what they scored on that indicator this year to last year and seeing the difference in that school performance from one year to the next. And the difference is not always positive. And so the idea here is to look at individual student growth from one year to the next. And that would be particularly on reading and math in grades 3 through 8. So in version 2.0, we went out with a survey that was shared. And again, we had feedback. And that was a component that was the most agreed upon change for the current system was to move from and remove the change element and move to individual student growth. So you're not going to see another question on the survey around that in 4.0 because we did get widespread agreement on making that change. So that is going to be part of the proposal moving forward.
Jennifer,
And
if I may chime in here for just a second. Again,
Sure.
that's another great, Dr. Stafford, thank you so much. That's another great example of how we're listening. As you go through and we're getting input, it was over 90, I think around 92, 94% of the people that we surveyed or that gave survey information back was we want to go more towards a student growth model as opposed to change model. When you look at student growth, I think the common thought there is where did you get the child and where did you take them? And I think that is probably one of the best parts of accountability is just how did the individual student grow, whether it be a gifted and talented student, whether it be an ELL student, regardless of the label that we give them, where did we get the child and where did we take them? That seems to be very common among our folks. So we listened. And so again, just like Dr. Stafford said, you won't see any more survey questions about growth versus change. We're going to focus in on our proposal being more about student growth. So again, want you to know we're listening, and that's why it's so important for you to give back the feedback on the surveys, but also to encourage others to give feedback on surveys too. So Dr. Stafford, I'll turn it back over to you. I just wanted to make sure we emphasize that point.
Thank you very much. And now those were the pieces around state, federal, and local accountabilities. Let's look now at what version 4.0 has around assessments. So again, it has choice points around our assessments and how it can move forward. So it includes a long-term goal of a through-year competency-based assessment. So if that's the direction, and we, again, encourage you to complete that survey, it's an assessment system that creates a seamless integration of learning experiences and feedback for the student as well as the educators. One that provides feedback on student learning and emphasizes authentic demonstrations of learning and gives them the opportunity to demonstrate competencies around essential knowledge and skills aligned to the Kentucky academic standards, as well as the portraits of a learner. So version 4.0 provides, again, some actionable steps if the goal is the through-year competency-based system. So it starts, again, on that left-hand side with enhancing the capacity within our state for the development and implementation of those locally administered performance-based assessments, particularly in social studies and writing. So we would start there and pilot those with particular schools and districts around developing those competency-based approach that includes those authentic demonstrations of those knowledge and skills. This innovative system would be then refined by that subset of districts before being scaled statewide. At the same time then, moving to the next box, that those efforts are happening around building the capacity around that authentic demonstration, we would be developing a through-year model around reading and math for the through that academic school year. One that that builds the through course model that would have administrations in, say, the fall, winter, and spring administration that are, again, aligned to the Kentucky academic standards, so that there's no question that it's a comprehensive, aligned system that meets the students' and teachers' needs around reporting and meaningful reporting in a timely fashion aligned to the Kentucky academic standards. Now, the goal here would be to replace that locally, those local interim assessments, and therefore reducing the physical costs within the school district. So the idea would be that the state would develop those interim assessments and fund those and provide those for the students. The shift would be that the social studies and writing would then become local administrations around those authentic demonstrations of performance assessments, and then everything would shift then at the end to a competency-based system. Now, I would note for you here that the reading and math proficiency would come from the spring assessments to meet that federal requirement, as well as the science. So we would also get from that spring assessment the growth that Dr. Fletcher and I just mentioned, so that we would get the individual student growth from that spring assessment from year to year. The last piece is around reporting of these different measures. And again, reporting would be structured and aligned to the decisions that would be made around the state, local, and federal accountability. So if the decision is to move forward regarding those assessments, whether it's through course, competency-based, whether it's vibrant learning experiences or an accreditation styles, the decision would be to align that reporting to reflect those priorities. So the dashboard would report both the federally required data elements that are expected and required by the U.S. Department of Education, and would align to those state priorities around those quality pieces. So some actionable path to get there. The dashboard would, again, align to those customized pieces. The federal ratings and the classifications around CSI, TSI, and another category would be reported publicly, as well as the disaggregated data that is required. Then the department would collaborate with districts and stakeholders to create a reporting system that meets their needs and balances the transparency around that accessibility and the readability in meeting the needs of those federal reporting requirements. A pilot could possibly be undertaken to develop a model for our state school report card that would include those vibrant learning experiences that we are driving in this system. So let's talk about some next steps. So we've talked about the study phase and 4.0. You have here on the slide, the version 4.0. We really hope that you dig into that, as well as share and complete the survey. We really want as broad of feedback as we can possibly get on that survey. We're taking into the study phase several resources. So on the website, you have videos. Dr. Fletcher did a video encouraging your feedback. There are several videos there around the different elements of an accreditation style. So if you're thinking particularly what is more around an accreditation style and how would that work, there's videos on that, as well as through course, vibrant learning experience, that percentage option as opposed to the quality option. Around the assessments on through course and then competency based. So there's a lot of resources there to dig into, as well as an overview. And there are both English as well as Spanish resources. Moving into the study phase, there's going to be several phases in that. The Kentucky United We Learn Council members are going to take an active participation, doing some interviews. There are focus groups that are going to have more intense depth of interviews. 36 districts are going to have some really intense discussions, 18 of which are local labs of learning. The other 18th are outside the local labs of learning. So we're going to have a readiness survey that we're hoping all 171 school districts complete. The feedback survey that you have here on the slide, that's going to be shared broadly. So if you would please complete the survey and share that with your colleagues and get them to complete the survey. And another piece that we have are our technical experts. We have engaged in the United We Learn national experts that are going to be looking at each of these different components and providing some input on those around those different components. Our technical advisory council that we have here with the department is going to hear conversations around that. So lots of good work going into the study phase. As far as next steps, there are several advisory councils, which includes your important feedback that will hear the version 4.0 and be encouraged to complete the survey. The Kentucky Board of Education is meeting in October. They will hear an update around the study phase. So they're going to hear in October kind of where we are in the study phase, not the results of the study phase. The results will come at their December meeting, but they'll hear kind of where we are along the path in our study phase. And then the next step for the Kentucky United We Learn Council is their convening in October, at the end of October, the 21st and 22nd, where they will hear information around the data collection. And that's where their conversations are going to resonate around the data and the collection of the survey and all of these other study components. The survey is open until October 4th. So please provide your input and engage with us in the conversation. So I'll pause there. That was a lot of information. I'll turn it over to Chair Francis and see if we have any questions from the members.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions right now from the membership? Feel free to come off mute or raise your hand. Alan Young, please jump in.
Hi. Well, I'm a newbie, so I first of all just want to thank you for this incredible um, way forward in terms of looking at how we might assess learning and growth in Kentucky, and how it is a learner-centered approach that also highlights the closer we are to the kids to be able to make those judgments and assessments about what we value most that they demonstrate. I have a question about, and this is kind of technical and it's just hitting me as I'm letting this all wash over me, not about the switch from change to student growth. I understand that part, but technically about how we define student growth with regard to the federal accountability reporting out, and also how that can also still reverberate, and wondering if there is a place where that is very clearly explained as to the components of the definition of student growth. I did hear it's still mostly tied to standardized testing, and it still may have a part about percentiles included, and that it still mostly might revolve around reading and math. So I'm probably sharing a little bit of my wonderings about it by highlighting that. But for me, the devil is always in the details. I love almost everything in this. I don't dislike that. I want to know more about that student growth definition, and also wondering, are there still ways to tinker with that or rethink or reimagine that if there would be consensus that would be possible? And then the second question has to do with, where can we find a list of districts that are doing the participation, the 18 and 18 and those kinds of things? Thank you.
Alan, thank you and welcome back. You've been a part of the previous discussion in the current system. So we've been at this multiple times on reimagining our accountability system and assessment systems. So yeah, the growth in Dr. Fletcher has provided some of his vision. Dr. Fletcher, I didn't know if you wanted to state more about what your vision is. And he may have had to step away. But looking at student growth, when we look at the assessment system, there is testing required for reading and math from year to year. So if you're looking at a measure of growth from year to year, the only assessments that are given on an annual basis is reading and math, grades 3 through 8. So when you're talking about individual student growth, it's an elementary and middle school measure only, because that's where we are testing that on a regular basis. So there are different models that you can look at as far as growth, and that's what the Technical Advisory Council or Committee, Kentucky, we have a group of national experts that will be discussing it, as well as I mentioned, we've got technical experts here within the council that is supporting the council's work, that has been involved in the conversations from the beginning. We work with the Center for Assessment, which has been involved in conversations and been longtime partners with the Kentucky Department of Education around each of our measures and metrics in our current accountability system, as well as previous accountability systems. Growth is a seems simple. When you talk about it on the surface, you just think, okay, for the difference in 1 year to the next, but it really gets into more psychometrics than that. So we're really engaging in this work with our technical experts around the measure of growth and how to include it in accountability. So we'll have more discussions with our both our national experts as well as our Kentucky TAC on how to move and what types of metrics and measures to put into growth.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think Josh has his hand up as well.
Yes, I've got a few questions. Josh Trosper, Assistant Principal, Knox Central High School, and I've got about 8 years of experience at the high school level, so some of my questions will be regarding that, but I also have elementary, middle school experience too, so trying to look at it from all angles. But and you kind of went into that a little bit, one part of my question with the elementary, middle growth portion, but on the through-year assessment system potentials, are the grade levels assessed looking to be the same, or are we expanding that possibly?
Yeah, so the idea is that there are multiple vendors that are being used right now to demonstrate growth. You have NWEA and MAP, you have STAR, you have iReady. There are multiple measures that are being used. And the idea is that the department would then create or purchase the type of system that would replace those, and that we would have an aligned system so that there's not any question as to whether they align to the Kentucky academic standards. The system is envisioned to be a cohesive system so that students and educators are getting feedback on the standards at that particular grade level. High school, is different than the elementary and middle schools, where they have their assessments are at each grade level. So we'd have to look and develop your high school administrations that would align then to and support the different learning or not learning style, but the different structure at the high school.
Yeah, I guess the easier way my question would, are look like sophomores and juniors, or would freshmen be included in that year round? Would we look at course specific, kind of like the old end of course assessment, like Algebra 1, geometry, or would it be more like a MAP or IXL, or we've done CERT in the past where it's just kind of comprehensive at that grade level?
Yeah, so those are all good questions, Josh, around those interim assessments and what they would be developed toward. So those are good questions that we'll take into the study phase and toward the development of that. We do realize, as I mentioned, that the summative assessment would have to align with the requirements of federal expectations at high school. So we would look at what types of assessments and where that they would be in any new system.
Okay, so that's not been really okay. I understand.
No.
I jumped,
Yeah.
Jumped ahead a little bit.
Right. So what we're taking into the study phase, we're really trying to still say, what do you want? So once we've kind of determined what people want, then the steps will be toward developing those and getting more information around those big concepts.
Okay. Thank you very much for answering my questions. Thank you all for allowing me to participate.
Thanks, Josh.
Other questions, Jennifer, about this version?
I also wanted to echo Alan's question about the districts who are participating. First of all, I'm really excited about innovation and the idea that it sounds like we will be able to weave together our high quality instruction and vibrant learning experiences more with assessment and accountability. I'm really excited about that, but I am really curious about the districts who are chosen and if there are opportunities to be part of the pilot for social studies and writing. How does all that play out?
My friend and colleague here, Sarah Snipes, is on, and I'm going to ask her does she have, because Sarah is in the Office of Continuous Improvement and is highly involved in the study phase as well. Sarah, do you have handy the list of 18 or have those been made public yet? I'm just not 100% on where we are with that.
Jennifer, while Sarah is looking for that or getting ready to speak, Davis County is one of the districts that's participating, and we are an example of a district that has not been doing the local laboratories of learning. And so this study phase is really about giving feedback on version 4.0. And so we've been asked to really study it and talk about it. And our survey is a little more detailed, trying to get input. And I think the idea behind it is, how are districts reacting to these defenses of learning and all of that if you haven't been involved in that work compared to the districts who have been participating? I don't think the list is public, but I don't think it's a big secret.
Yeah, Janet Beth, this is Rhonda. I think that that was a really great answer. I don't think it's probably posted yet anywhere. We can certainly get that. There's been interest in around that. There was an attempt to sort of balance this across the state with different size districts, as well as, again, having that grounding with both those who've been involved in the local laboratory learnings and those who not. And as Janet Beth has already mentioned, the design for these 36 is to dig a little deeper, to get more detail, get a better sense of the level of preparedness to move forward with a number of these ideas that are on the table in 4.0. So we'll certainly get the list for you. I just don't know that it's out there on the website anywhere yet. Work has just gotten started.
Yeah.
And I would really emphasize to the committee that, like I said, I spent some time over the weekend reading the print material that has been put out. And so you can actually get all the definitions, kind of see more details about the timeline. They take the principles that they were working and you can see where it's crossed over. And that to me was a great way to dig deeper into what Jennifer has shared. And so that is also an option. I have not yet watched all the videos. There are also a series of videos. I tend to be a reader before a video watcher. So that is on my to-do list for this weekend, trying to be sure that I can give good, meaningful feedback. My big question, and I think you went over it in one of the very first slides, but I think what's important for this committee to realize is the timeline. And if I remember correctly, the idea is to get approved legislation in March of 2026. Is that still the timeline that you're working on?
It is. So the 2026 legislative session is what we're focusing toward. And that's the goal, is to have legislation during that session. So legislative session, General Assembly 2026, which seems like a long way away, but it's really not, with all the conversations, all the advocacy that has to happen to get to approve legislation. So there's a lot of work to be done.
And one of the goals, if I remember correctly, I think I've either heard this or asked this question, is for the committee to be able, for this work and this kind of in-depth approach and working with the legislature, is for the department to be able to start rolling out some of the components early on, instead of what we normally have is approved legislation and then a big kind of time frame while we design whatever the legislature said. So the way I read it is you're hoping to get it started pretty soon after that approved legislation. Is that still the hope?
So that's where those actionable steps come in with that aiming for the moon. There's launch pads in there, and then there's actionable steps to get there.
So this will be a, go ahead, Rhonda.
I was going to say, and Genevieve, I think that's a great question about the time frame. Part of it will depend, I think, on what comes out of final legislation, because some things do take a while to procure, to create, to get into place. So there still would potentially be some lag for certain pieces before they could start. Because again, obviously, it's even if it's streamlined, it's still got some complexity to it. But the goal to get to that legislation in 26 is to, keep people informed along the way, to make some of those decisions, to get some of that work in advance, which I thought was a very really good observation. We have engaged legislators already as part of the conversation. We have legislators who are attending the United We Learn work, who are also being very open to meetings. There were a number of legislators at the Superintendent Summit that Commissioner Fletcher mentioned earlier. So part of it is keeping those conversations open and engaged, and just like we're having the conversation with this important group, to make sure that we have the same kinds of more in-depth conversations moving forward with legislators as well.
So this won't be the last time we're going to hear about this. Just keep watching the numbers. They might come back with a version 5.0, you never know, or 4.2. That's how the design process works. And again, we should feel honored that we get to be part of the advising and input on this. Please do complete the survey. Take some time, reflect on all Jennifer said, review the slides. If you want to dig deeper, go to the Prototype 4.0 resource page. But that survey, is it October 1st or 2nd? I can't remember.
4th.
4th. Okay. I was cutting your time a little short. You've got a few more days. Get it done before you go off on fall break to go look at the beautiful fall foliage. So we are almost done with our meeting. We have one very important session left to go. And that is, in the midst of all this, we still have an accountability system that we have to move along. And so KDE is managing the current system while they're dreaming about the future system. And so Rhonda and Jennifer are going to share a little bit about the timeline.
Well, thank you all. I'm Rhonda Sims, Associate Commissioner in the Office of Assessment Accountability, and many of you have had the pleasure to work with before, even if you're new to this committee. Just Alan, as Jennifer said, I remember you well from earlier conversations, and so excited to meet those of you that I've not had the opportunity to work with before. This is a really significant group to weigh in. Each of you bring a particular perspective to the work. And that's really why we have the structure of this committee this way, as it's required in state law. But it's looking for all of those different perspectives. So thank you for your engagement, for being here, for saying yes, and being with us each time as we kind of move this work forward. We start with a guiding question, and you see that on your screen. We're getting ready to do some release of results from the 23-24 school year, the fall 24 reporting and accountability data. As Commissioner Fletcher mentioned earlier today, we have an important activity coming up Thursday that involves our district leaders, which is called Quality Control Day, where we're looking at the flow of information, really looking for system issues with programming as we get ready to report the accountability. So Jennifer and I wanted to just touch base with you a little bit on some of the key time frames for this work. I think one thing you all are well aware of, we're excited about the new, excited about the work with the new, but we also keep our excitement going for what we're currently doing and the support that you need to do what's currently in place. So I feel like many times we kind of have our foot in both pieces. We have our foot in the current, and we have our foot into the future. And so, there are parts of our beautiful state where you can stand with your foot in one state and the other state at the same time and around the country. So we're a little bit like that in assessment and accountability. So we want to keep you supported as much as possible in the current work that we're doing as we build to the new work. And so I think Jennifer has a slide here on public reporting. Jennifer, do you want to kick us off here on the public reporting, and then I'll chime in as well.
Sure. So the tentative timeline is here on your screen. There are a number of steps to get us to this public reporting, but the tentative timeline is that beginning October 1st, our districts will receive the data under embargo. So after Quality Control Day, which is this coming Thursday, we'll have steps in there. If there's any errors found in the system, they will be updated and released to our districts on October 1st. Now, this is under embargo, and then at that time, that districts then can begin talking with their teacher leaders, their building level leaders around this embargo data, because that will then become public. Additionally, on October 1st, the media outlets who have signed a non-disclosure agreement will receive the data. So districts then, district leaders can begin speaking with their local media and media outlets around their particular context and their data. On October 3rd, and it is at 12:01 a.m., so early that morning, so that the news outlets can put it in their morning feeds, or if there's paper copies of newspapers still in print that they can print it on October 3rd, will be publicly reporting. And for this year, different than in prior years, we are releasing the accountability data and assessment data in open house. There has been a new vendor. A new vendor is ANLAR, that is developing and managing the public school report card. And it's taken a bit of time to get that up and running. So the data will be released publicly on Kentucky Department of Education's website. There are what's called our open house. Then we'll move into what we call the 10-day quality control data review period from the 3rd to the 14th. And that will be the next time that schools can make individual student changes after public reporting. So that will happen then the 10 days. That's a little bit more than 10 days, but there's some weekends in there. So just as a reminder, we, as the department, has that new public report card, school report card vendor. So it's just not giving us the ability to create that nice, pretty dashboard that we've had in the past. We'll have it eventually this school year, but we wanted to get the data out as soon as possible when it was ready. And that just did not line up with the development and the programmers that are creating that nice dashboard for us. So we're going to go ahead and release the data in Open House. It's a platform that has been around, and it has a lot of historical data in it. So there's a lot of educational data that is available, and we want to make sure that gets out in a timely manner through Open House. And again, that dashboard will be available later this year, this calendar year, but it just didn't work out time-wise. So in the data sheets, you'll still get the color those color ratings around those indicators and that overall. But in the spreadsheet in open house, it will just say blue or green or yellow. So you'll still get the colors. It's just not going to be in that pretty dashboard until later this calendar year.
A couple of things just to kind of
Yep.
reemphasize. We have had the individual student results from the Kentucky Summative Assessment those have been in district since early August. So we trust that people have been looking at those, utilizing those. We opened up a window for some cleanup opportunity, I think around August 7th. And so as we get to this stage Thursday, it's about looking at more the accountability status. So in the current system, that's the colors, it's TSI kinds of information. If a school maybe has exited CSI, it will be those kind of federal labels and state labels. You will only see your district's information if you have the pass protected to be in the system during quality control day. So this is really a DAC information, as well as superintendents will see it, I'm sure, and DACs many times involve their backs in this sort of work of doing this final check. But we are committed to collaboration and partnership with our districts. We do know this is a busy time of year, just like in August when we release results. So there will be some overlap with some spring breaks. We're aware of that, and we hate that that's occurred, but really any way we shift the data, we're likely to hit somebody's spring break because of how those breaks move around in October. But we hope that you'll have all the information you need to do any kind of conversations you might have with the media as we move forward. And, we have been committed for many, many years in Kentucky to allowing districts to help us be sure we have your data accurate and correct as it goes out. So it's exciting times for the current system as we move forward here over the next few weeks. You will not, when the embargo information is shared, you would then be able to see other districts' information at that time. So that's really what is kind of different between the embargo and the 19th. The 19th is only focused on your district. And when we get to October 1 for embargo, you can see everyone's information at that point. Jennifer, any final thing that you would have for those two slides?
I would see if anyone has questions about that.
Well, Jennifer and Rhonda, we appreciate you all coming. I think the key to remember for everybody on this council, regardless of your position, the public data, hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes well Thursday, will be released October 3rd. And you can check out your local media sources, but you can also go on to KDE and get access to the open house where you'll be able to see the schools. For the school-based people, you'll be busy looking at it a little earlier. And we appreciate, I can remember the first time we did a data review day in a building that's no longer there, but we appreciate the opportunity to really make sure the data that comes out about our Kentucky schools is accurate and really reflects good data systems and everything. So make sure to check that out. I'm going to conclude with a couple more items. And that is tentatively mark your calendars for March 18th, July 15th, September 16th, and November 18th. Those are the tentative dates for SCAAC in 2025. Like Jennifer said, when we were talking about the moonshot and taking things to legislation in 2026, that's not that far off. Once these dates are firmed, you'll get invitations and you'll get some information about that. But the November date is set, so do make sure November 19th is on your calendar. We will be meeting again on that date. Between now and then, if you have any items that you're interested in hearing more about, don't hesitate to reach out and let me or Melissa know that there's an item you'd like us to learn more about. Sometimes we can modify the agenda and add that item as needed. If there are no more comments or questions,
Jana Beth, could you repeat those dates again?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
of course. March 18th, July 15th, September 16th, and November 18th.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And Melissa will send those out as soon as everything is official. We do have a couple more new members who should be joining us in November. So hopefully that we'll get our new committee together. So at this point, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Heather. A second?
Second. Chuck
Thank
Fletcher.
you. Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and raise your hand. Goodbye. Thank you again for spending some time with us this morning. We appreciate that, and we look forward to seeing you all in November.